She'll return when you no longer want her. Modern Stoic. Have you ever felt like you're doing everything possible to make a relationship work, yet she keeps drifting away? It's an exasperating experience. But here's the twist: the solution isn't in chasing her more or trying to prove your worth. In fact, the moment you stop desperately wanting her, that's when everything changes. In this video, we'll explore why stepping back can actually draw her closer. This shift in mindset doesn't just affect the relationship, it helps you become the strongest version of yourself. Sometimes, the key to moving forward is learning how to let go. The strongest love is the one that doesn't try to hold on, but instead lets both people be free and find their way back to each other. Number 1. The shift she never expected. She never saw it coming. For so long, she could almost predict your every move. You'd always reach out, check in, and try again, even after things ended badly. That version of you was consistent, maybe even too forgiving, always seeking resolution. But now, everything has shifted. You're not reacting anymore. You're no longer rushing to reconnect, and that silence she once took comfort in, knowing you'd always be there, has turned unsettling. It makes her question everything. What's changed? You're not doing this to punish her. You're doing it because you've outgrown the chase, like a true modern Stoic. You've turned inward, not to retreat, but to reclaim your peace. That internal shift, that silence, is more powerful than anything you could have said. She didn't expect this new version of you, the man who no longer flinches when she pulls away, the man who doesn't rush back when she gets unsure. She remembers the old version, the one who checked in after a few days, maybe apologized even if it wasn't his fault, just to break the silence. That comfort gave her control. But now, your stillness is unsettling. You're not bitter, you're not angry, you're just calm. And that calm terrifies her more than any argument ever could. You're no longer the emotional safety net you once were. You've taken back your energy, and that's where your power lies. A modern Stoic doesn't need to shout to be heard. His silence is enough. You've stopped investing in confusion and uncertainty, instead focusing on the clarity you found within yourself. And now, she's beginning to see what she never truly noticed before: your worth in your absence. She's looking back at the times you stayed, forgave, and offered softness, even when you were hurting. But now that those gestures are gone, she sees them for what they were. Your choices, not her guarantee, and you no longer make them for someone who never valued them. This is the shift she never saw coming. She thought she had more time, more chances, more of your patience. But a man grounded in self-respect doesn't repeat cycles just because they're familiar. You're not that predictable comfort anymore. You're the mystery she can't solve. And when a woman realizes she's lost access to the man who once gave her the benefit of the doubt, something inside her begins to unravel. Seneca once said, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage, but in your case, to let go fully, calmly, and without resentment, that is the courage. And that's what makes you different. You're not chasing closure anymore. You've become it. You're not hoping she'll return. You've already moved forward. And when she turns back, it won't be for the version of you she once knew. It will be for the man she never expected you to become. The man who doesn't need her validation. The man who found peace in letting go. Your silence no longer begs. It speaks volumes. That shift, it didn't just change how she sees you. It changed everything. You've found the blessing of Stoicism, and that's something she never expected to face. Number 2, the weight of your absence. When a man who was once emotionally available becomes distant, the silence becomes oppressive. Initially, she might shrug it off. She tells herself that you're just taking a breather, that this silence is temporary. But when days stretch into weeks and there's still no word from you, something starts to break. Your absence, which was once a fleeting thought, begins to feel like it's here to stay. And that's when the full weight of your absence lands on her. Not just the silence, but what that silence truly means. You're no longer present, not emotionally, not mentally, and certainly not spiritually. At one point, she could feel your presence even when you were distant. She believed deep down that she still had a hold on your heart, that you would return, just as you always did. But this time, you didn't. There are no more check-ins, no subtle signs that you're still holding on, still waiting. The man who once filled the silence with frantic apologies, with hope, with reassurance, is now filling it with calm, with purpose, with dignity. And that shift, it's deafening to her. As the Stoic Seneca once said, sometimes even to live is an act of courage. And for you, living without seeking her approval, letting go without bitterness, walking away without drama, that is your courage. You're not doing this out of anger, but out of understanding. You've learned something vital. Peace is not something that someone else can give you. It's something you choose for yourself. The blessing of Stoicism lies in the ability to stop chasing what drains you, to embrace the wisdom of Stoic lessons, which teach you to choose your own peace above everything else. Ask yourself, how many times did you break your own heart just to keep her comfortable? How many times did you send that final message, hoping it would fix something she wasn't even willing to repair? But now, you've stopped. There are no more last messages. No more emotional breadcrumbs left behind to pacify her or yourself. You're not punishing her with silence. You're protecting your peace. You're no longer playing a part in a cycle that left you depleted. Your absence, wrapped in self-respect, is now echoing in ways she never expected. She'll return when you no longer need her. Not because of some childish game, but because your silence now carries the weight of a man who has outgrown the very thing that once drained him. The weight she feels. That's not just your absence. That's her finally realizing the value of your presence now that it's no longer hers to claim. And here's the hard truth: you've learned a profound lesson. In the quiet, in the distance, you've found clarity. Your peace comes first. And that lesson, the one wrapped in the serenity of the blessing of Stoicism, will forever be yours. You must understand that the absence of your emotional chaos, your unspoken needs, is now the loudest thing in the room. Number 3, when her control slips. In the past, she had you figured out. She knew exactly how to trigger you, how to make you react. You were predictable, always ready to comfort, to chase, to forgive. No matter how many times you were pushed aside, you might have believed this was love, constantly showing up for someone who didn't value your presence. But no more. The Stoic man you've become has shed that old version of yourself. Your emotional energy has become impenetrable. You no longer respond to her attempts to provoke you. She may try, dropping a vague message, sending a subtle hint, or trying to rekindle old patterns. But you remain unshaken. You've learned to stand your ground. You don't flinch. No longer will you be the man who rushes to fix things that were never your responsibility. This shift isn't about revenge or playing mind games. It's about taking full control of yourself, your energy, your peace. As the Stoic principle teaches us, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Epictetus. The Stoic man is unmoved by the emotional whims of others, for he understands the only thing he can truly control is himself. When she realizes you no longer react as you once did, that's when her control begins to slip away. It's unsettling for her to see you so calm, so grounded and unaffected. You've become a man who doesn't respond to tests of power. Once, you might have overthought her cold replies or distant tones, but now you see them for what they are: attempts to regain control. The difference: you no longer react. You respond with stillness, with boundaries. Your presence has changed, and she feels it. You no longer chase, explain, or panic. You are the master of your emotions, and that's what she never expected. The man she once manipulated with a glance or a word has transformed into a man who has full control over himself. When this happens, the power dynamic shifts. She may try to provoke the old you, but she'll only realize he's gone. Not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring about yourself more. And this is where the story turns. This is when she'll return, not to the man who needed her, but to the man who grew beyond her emotional grip. When that happens, your silence will speak louder than any words could. The Stoic life teaches us to remain steadfast, to cultivate our inner strength, and to never let anyone pull the strings of our peace. You've mastered your emotions. You've become a man who stands firm, unshaken, and in full control. This is the power of the Stoic man. This is how you win. Number 4, you've outgrown the old version of you. You've outgrown the old version of yourself. The man who used to bend over backward to appease her. The one who'd answer her texts at 2 a.m. despite the coldness she'd shown earlier that day. The one who ignored mixed signals because he believed in her potential. The man who thought love was enough to repair what respect never built. The man who gave too much, tried too hard, and fought tirelessly for a connection even if it meant losing himself in the process. He's gone. Not because you're bitter, but because it was necessary. The man you once were was driven by fear of losing her. Fear of not being enough. Fear that walking away meant failure. But life has a way of burning away the parts of you that no longer serve. You've been through the fire. You've sat in silence with your own pain, asked yourself tough questions, rebuilt your standards, and emerged stronger. You're not chasing affection that vanishes when it's most inconvenient anymore. You're not apologizing for expecting clarity or respect. You no longer settle for being almost enough in someone else's story. What you crave now is alignment, peace, and truth, and you won't compromise for anything less. You've learned to walk away when necessary to protect the integrity of your own peace. And here's the thing she doesn't quite understand yet: if she comes back, it won't hit the same. Not because you hate her, but because you no longer need her validation to feel complete. You filled the space she left with purpose, with presence, with an inner strength that doesn't shout to be heard, but is undeniable. A modern Stoic doesn't react. He doesn't chase what confuses him or cling to what no longer serves his higher self. As the old Stoic Epictetus wisely said, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. And that's what you've done. Quietly, consistently. You've grown without needing to perform, without posting about it, without any external validation. And she feels it. Maybe she hasn't said it yet, but she can sense the shift. She remembers the man who once waited anxiously by his phone. But now, when she looks for you, you're not there. Not emotionally, not mentally, not energetically. That absence isn't punishment. It's transformation. It's the blessing of Stoicism. If she returns, and there's a good chance she will, it won't be to the man she left behind. It will be to a new version of you, the man who no longer waits, the man who no longer entertains what once drained him, the man whose silence speaks volumes about his self-worth, not his pride. When she faces you again, she'll confront something she never expected, the man she always wanted, but now one who desires something far more important than her attention. He wants peace, and he's willing to walk away from anything that threatens it. That's the power of becoming a modern Stoic. That's what true growth looks like. If you find this valuable, comment below, and share it with someone who could benefit. Don't forget to subscribe for more wisdom. Comment to remember I am a man of purpose, not attachment. Number 5, she doesn't recognize your energy anymore. In the past, your energy spoke louder than words. You were emotionally available, always there, ready to fix things, even when they weren't your mess to clean up. You reacted fast. You over-explained, reassuring her, even when she was the one pulling away. Your presence was an open door, constantly welcoming, predictable, and easy to walk through. You gave her access to your heart without requiring her to earn it. But now the energy you bring is different. It's not petty. It's just clear. You respond slower, not out of indifference, but out of wisdom. Your attention is no longer freely given. It's earned. You've come to understand that your peace is sacred, and you protect it fiercely. This shift, however subtle, is something she didn't expect. She doesn't recognize the new you, the man who doesn't bend for validation or rush to calm tension just to keep the connection alive. The silence that now fills the space between you unsettles her. This is the emotional detachment you've cultivated. Not out of coldness, but because you've learned the high cost of pouring your heart into someone who only offers a half-empty cup. You didn't need to announce your transformation. You didn't need to make a scene or send a bitter message to prove a point. Instead, you did something much more powerful. You changed quietly, gradually, and completely. And this, my friend, is where the blessing of Stoicism enters. From a Stoic perspective, this isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming unshakable. As Marcus Aurelius said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. The moment you understood this, your strength grew. You stopped trying to manage her moods, and instead, you began mastering your own. Your presence is no longer predictable. It's purposeful. And what is more powerful than a man who no longer seeks closure, approval, or permission? A man who no longer wants her, not out of anger or resentment, but because he understands his own worth. This version of you, the man who smiles without needing her response, who lives without needing her presence, is the version that will remain etched in her mind. When you no longer look back, she will return. Not out of games, not out of manipulation, but because your energy is no longer something she can take for granted. You've become the kind of man who moves forward, not to prove a point, but to protect your peace. And that energy, that strength, will remain with her long after you've stopped reaching out. This is the essence of Stoicism, the quiet, unshakable strength that flows from understanding the value of your own peace and the blessing of Stoic lessons. You've mastered the art of moving on, not with bitterness, but with clarity. And that, my friend, is the most powerful shift you can make. Number 6, she'll test the waters again. She'll return when you no longer want her. This is the stark truth, and it's a truth you must embrace. It often starts small, a view of your story, a like on an old photo, a vague message with no context. She's not fully back yet, but she's lingering on the edge, testing to see if you're still the man you once were. She's wondering if the door you once opened for her will still swing wide at the slightest touch. But here's the powerful reality: you're not that man anymore. Not even close. The version of you that used to jump at every breadcrumb, he's gone. You've outgrown the need to read into half-hearted gestures or fill in the blanks of her uncertainty with hope. She doesn't expect this change, but this is what's different now. You've mastered the Stoic life. You've become immune to emotional volatility. You've learned the vital principle that interest without intention is just noise, and you're no longer available for noise. A Stoic man understands this on a deep level. He doesn't confuse fleeting actions with real commitment. He doesn't react impulsively. He evaluates. He's grounded in principle, not emotional impulse. As Epictetus wisely said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. You don't react anymore. You reflect, but you don't chase, you evaluate. That message sitting unanswered. That's not just you ignoring her. It's you protecting your peace. You're not overanalyzing what a like means. You're not scrambling for meaning in moments that lack substance. You don't need external validation anymore. You no longer feel the urgency to prove you're still available, still waiting for her to come back. She's testing the waters to see if she can stir your emotions, to see if she can still pull you back into her orbit. But when she's met with silence, when her digital breadcrumbs don't evoke the reaction they used to, that's when she'll realize the change. The man who once clung to every interaction, every word, every look, has now become someone who protects his energy like it's sacred, because it is. She might hope to feel the same control she once had over you, but now she faces a man who sees things differently. You've moved on. You no longer see her as someone to win back. She once had access to your life, but she lost it, and it's no longer guaranteed. So, when she tries again to test the waters, let her watch from a distance. Don't react, don't respond. Your peace isn't negotiable. The old you was hungry for external validation, the new you is driven by internal strength. And when she realizes that she's not testing a man who's waiting, but a man who has outgrown the story, that's when the weight of your silence will hit her. She'll return. But by then, you may no longer want her, because you've moved on. You've mastered the Stoic principles, and you don't need to prove your worth anymore. You've won. Number 7, you no longer need closure. There comes a time when you no longer need closure. She may return, hoping for some grand moment to explain herself, to tidy up the loose ends she left behind. But by now, you've already come to terms with it, with or without her words. The truth is, closure isn't something anyone else can give you. It's something you build within yourself, and that's the blessing of Stoicism. The realization that peace comes from within. You no longer need an apology. You don't need validation, nor do you need to rehash what's been. You've already moved on, and here's the kicker: you no longer have any interest in reopening the chapter she closed. She might have expected you to still be hurting, still seeking answers, still hoping for a final confession that would somehow make the pain worth it. But when she shows up and finds a man who's moved on, not out of spite, but out of strength, it leaves her in an unexpected silence. That silence reflects her delay, her failure to move forward while you've already crossed into a new life. You've learned the art of being a modern Stoic. You don't wait for anyone to give you permission to heal. You chose peace the moment you stopped looking to her for clarity, the moment you stopped waiting for her to make sense of the confusion she created. Like an old Stoic, you understood that stillness trumps chaos, and you didn't demand closure from her. You created it within yourself, through acceptance. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic philosopher, once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you'll find a strength within that nothing or no one can take away. When she finally reaches out, expecting to pick up where you left off emotionally, she'll find herself faced with something she wasn't prepared for: irrelevance. It's not because you're trying to hurt her. It's because you've outgrown the need for her to explain your story. Ironically, that's when she begins questioning everything. The moment she realizes she no longer holds the key to your closure. That moment, right there, is the true power of the modern Stoic. You've stopped waiting for permission to move on and started living on your own terms. Now, take a moment. Think back over your life and how many times you waited for someone else to give you the ending to your story. But in truth, that ending was always in your hands. The shift from needing their words to relying on your own acceptance is where your power lives. This is the true blessing of Stoicism, realizing that closure isn't an event, it's a state of mind you create. If this resonates with you, let me know in the comments. Share your thoughts or simply type, "I choose my own closure." The moment you take ownership of this truth is the moment you stop waiting for permission to heal and start living the life you were meant to live. Number 8. She starts to romanticize the past. Time, that masterful editor, has a way of rewriting history, especially when regret begins to seep in. She begins to remember you differently, not as the man she left wondering, but as the man who always showed up, always cared. The little things you used to do, suddenly, they're monumental in her memory. The texts you sent weren't just words on a screen. They were a testament to your presence, your care. The way you listened wasn't just a passing act, it was rare, something special. And now, in the quiet of her own mind, she finds herself wondering how she ever let that go. She starts to miss what once seemed ordinary, the comfort of your presence that she took for granted. But here's the thing she's not recalling as clearly: the way she pulled away, without explanation. The times when your loyalty seemed to be an afterthought, and you were left wondering if you were the only one trying. She forgets how you waited, hoped, and fought to keep things together while she distanced herself. Those memories of hurt, they get buried under the haze of nostalgia. And that's the trick of the mind. It edits the story when the silence gets loud, but you see it now with clarity. You're not lost in what could have been. You're grounded in what was, the full picture, the warmth and the wounds. You don't let one overshadow the other anymore. That's the growth. That's the power of Stoicism. A Stoic man doesn't let longing cloud his judgment. He holds the past gently but firmly, thankful for the lessons learned, unshaken by the illusions that time tries to paint. There was a time when the thought of her returning might have set your heart racing. Maybe you'd have welcomed her back with open arms, thinking this time things would be different, but not anymore. Not after you've embraced the blessing of Stoicism. Not after you've learned to stand firmly in your truth. You've gained something she didn't expect: clarity. You've stopped replaying the fantasy, stopped romanticizing the past. You've started living in the present, rooted in reality. As Epictetus wisely said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. And you've learned that freedom is won by letting go of the things you cannot control. Her choices, her silence, even her possible return. They're beyond your grasp. What's within your control now is your peace, your power, and your refusal to cling to what once made you question your worth. So when she shows up, with soft hints of reunion, romanticizing a version of the past that's been polished by distance, you will know the truth. The pull might still be there, but you won't be moved. You are no longer the man who needed her to choose you. You have become the man who chooses peace. And once you've tasted that freedom, Once you've experienced the Stoic lessons that teach you to detach from the noise, you will never go back to the emotional captivity of the past. If you find today's content useful to you, don't forget to share your feelings and lessons with us, or simply comment, "Very cool." It's a great encouragement for our channel makers. Thank you very much. Number 9. Your silence becomes her mirror. In life, the most powerful act a man can take is often the simplest silence. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting back the truth she can no longer ignore. When you choose not to react, not to explain, not to chase her approval, you force her to confront herself. She'll begin to replay the past, rethinking the words she said, the actions she took, without you needing to lift a finger. And that is the essence of Stoicism. You don't need to punish or correct. You simply step back and let reality unfold. The man who once rushed to reassure and explain has evolved. He no longer seeks validation from others, especially from those who've overlooked his worth. Your silence isn't empty. It's full of meaning, full of lessons she'll eventually have to learn on her own. It shows her that you've grown, that you are no longer the man who needs to be understood. Now, you are the man who understands himself. She may have once thought you would always be there, that your patience had no end. But now, your absence, your stillness, tells her a story louder than any words. As Marcus Aurelius said, the best answer to anger is silence. It is not just anger that your silence answers. It answers confusion, regret, and the realization that you no longer revolve around her approval. You've mastered the Stoic principle of discipline, remaining calm, not reacting out of emotion but letting your path speak for itself. She'll return when you no longer want her. The silence she once interpreted as cold will now be the very thing that forces her to face herself, and maybe even regret losing you. That mirror, that reflection is you, the man who has stepped into his power. Reflect on this. How many times have you tried to explain yourself to someone who was never truly listening? How often did that effort drain you instead of changing them? Sometimes the strongest move you can make is to let your silence speak for you. This is the essence of the Stoic life: mastering yourself, your emotions, and your reactions. Let that silence be your message. Number 10. You've reclaimed your standards. Your peace is now sacred, something that isn't just handed out but earned. Access isn't granted based on past connections or old memories, but on alignment with who you are today. And that shift, that clarity, it's something she never expected. You used to bend to give second chances based on feelings, not facts. You held on because of memories, not mutual respect. You forgave too easily, accepted too little, and mistook patience for permission. But now, all that has changed. She might try to come back, and when she does, she'll likely bring with her the scent of nostalgia, a reminder of the good times, a soft plea to reopen doors that were once slammed shut. But the man she left behind, he's not the man you are now. The old you may have welcomed her back without a second thought, thinking that love alone was reason enough. But you're not that man anymore. The new you, the one who's been through the fire, knows better. Fire doesn't just burn, it forges it. It refines. What you've built now isn't ego, it's clarity on its peace, and that peace is non-negotiable. Stoicism, especially the Blessing of Stoicism, teaches us that self-mastery begins with self-respect. As the old Stoic Epictetus said, know first who you are and then adorn yourself accordingly. And now, you know exactly who you are. This means you no longer bend your standards just because someone from your past walks back into your life. You don't measure their presence by how much you miss them. You measure it by how well they align with your present. So let's say she reaches out. She wants to talk, to catch up, and you feel that old flicker of emotion. But instead of rushing to respond, you pause. You don't ask, "Does she still love me?" You ask, "Do I still align with this?" That is the Stoic way. Stoicism teaches you not to chase fleeting emotions. You weigh the long-term cost to your peace. You now ask better questions. Is this healthy for me? Is this consistent with my values? Is this someone who respects what I've worked so hard to build? And if the answer is no, you don't try to fix it. You don't bargain. You simply walk away, quietly, confidently, without regret. Because when you've reclaimed your standards, you stop seeing her return as a victory. You see it as a test you no longer need to pass. This, my friend, is the power of modern Stoic wisdom. It is the strength of self-respect and the certainty that your peace, once reclaimed, is a treasure too valuable to compromise. The old Stoic understood this, and now you do too. Number 11. She returns, but you've already moved on. When she finally comes back, after the silence has stretched too long for her to bear, she'll find a man who no longer needs her to return. It's not that you stopped caring. It's that you started caring for yourself more. You've put in the work. You faced the ache, the confusion, the emptiness she left behind. And instead of filling that void with distractions, you filled it with purpose. The gym became your temple, and every rep a step toward clarity. Books became your mentors, and their wisdom shaped your soul. Peace, that's now your new standard. So when her name flashes on your screen, it no longer lights up your world. Because that world no longer revolves around her. It revolves around your mission. It revolves around the man you're becoming. The one who respects himself too much to be pulled into the same old patterns. You remember what it was like to wait, to hope she'd finally see your worth. But now you see that worth clearly, even without her validation. This is the shift she never expected. Maybe she shows up with teary eyes, trembling words, and a heart full of, "I miss you." She may even admit she was wrong, that she didn't know what she had. Once, those words would have disarmed you. You would have dropped everything to hold her again. But not this time. Not because you're bitter, but because you're better. A Stoic doesn't build walls out of pain. He builds boundaries out of wisdom. You didn't move on to prove a point. You moved on because staying in the same place would have cost you your peace. You didn't chase closure, you created it within. Like Marcus Aurelius wisely said, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. And your thoughts are no longer consumed by someone who once left you in doubt. She comes back, but the version of you who needed her no longer exists. You're not waiting at the door anymore. You're not lost in what-ifs. You've reached a place she can't touch because she stayed behind while you chose to grow. That's the moment she realizes you're not hers anymore. Not because she lost you, but because you found yourself. And now, she's looking at a man who no longer looks back. A man who's embraced the blessing of Stoicism. A man who has mastered Stoic lessons, where peace, self-respect, and wisdom guide his every move. Don't ever forget, the more you grow, the more your peace becomes your priority. She'll come back, but your focus won't waver. You're already on a mission far greater than anything she can offer. That is the power of Stoicism. You found the strength to leave behind the past, and now, nothing can pull you back. Hey there. Thank you for sticking with me till the end. If this message resonated with you today, let it really sit with you. Silence isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of wisdom. The strongest thing you can do sometimes is to walk away without looking back. It takes strength, but it's often the best thing for your peace of mind. If you found value in this video, do me a favor and hit that like button. It helps spread this message to others who might need it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So leave a comment or simply type "I choose peace." And make sure to check out the next video on the screen. It could be just the clarity you're looking for. See you in the next one. Stay grounded, stay powerful, stay stoic.